We interrupt our program to bring you this important message.
You're listening to Carousel Sniper Victim, a Dead Glass Design production, with your host, Sean Jeffrey.
There was something hanging, blocking my entry into the hallway of the house. I thought it looked like some type of blanket or some sort of covering that had been placed up on the archway. So I remember I used my left hand to push it aside, and immediately I could feel coldness coming on my left arm. So I looked down and my left arm was just covered in blood.
There was blood everywhere. A line of blood out from the door into the kitchen area. There's a pot on the stove. I think I might have even said to Scotty, I'll give you one guess where the head is.
I got a phone call from VKG, which is police radio, telling us there'd been a murder. And I said to the operator, well, how do you know it's a murder? He said, well, he's been decapitated.
Family dinners. I think Charles Dickens may have actually been writing about them when he wrote A Tale of Two Cities. It was the best of times, it was the worst of times. Families and the inevitable gatherings and family dinners that come with them can bring out the best in people and oftentimes the worst in people. No politics or religion at the table, please. Usually filled with laughter and joy, but also sometimes arguments or disagreements, but family is family, and we love each other all the same. Although, for most sane, reasonable humans, the idea of trying to serve up a member of the family for dinner is just beyond all comprehension. But that is exactly what Katherine Knight did. Well, tried to do. She is the only woman in the history of Australia that has received a life sentence without the possibility of parole. She is never to be released from prison. Her crime was considered so heinous and so barbaric that she can never again take her place amongst civilised society. Katherine Knight's family was originally from New South Wales' Hunter Valley region. Her mother, Barbara, was forced to move to Moree after beginning a relationship with Ken Knight, a co-worker of her actual husband, Jack Rowan. The Rowan and Knight families were both well known in the small, conservative rural town. And as things tend to do in small towns, rumours spread, and the affair was a major scandal. Two of Rowan's 4 children remained with their father, while the youngest were sent to live with an aunt in Sydney. Katherine Knight was the younger of twins, born to Barbara and her de facto partner Ken on the 24th of October 1955 in Tenterfield, New South Wales. Jack Rowan died in 1959, and the 2 children who had lived with him moved in with the Knight family. Barbara's grandmother was apparently an Indigenous Australian from the Moree area who had married an Irishman. She was proud of this fact and liked to think of her own family as Aboriginal, though this was kept a family secret, as there was considerable racism in the area at the time, and this was a source of tension for the children. Apart from her twin, the only person Knight was close to was her uncle Oscar Knight, who was a champion horseman. She was devastated when he committed suicide in 1969 and continues to maintain that his ghost visits her. The family moved back to Aberdeen the same year that Oscar Knight committed suicide, 1969. Katherine Knight's father, Ken, was an alcoholic who openly used violence and intimidation to rape her mother on numerous occasions. Katherine's mother, Barbara, in turn, often told her daughters intimate details of her sex life and how much she hated sex and men. On one occasion, when Knight complained to her mother that one of her partners wanted her to take part in a sex act that she didn't want to be part of, Barbara told her, quote, "Put up with it and stop complaining." On leaving school at age 15, without having learned to read or write, she gained employment as a cutter in a clothing factory. 12 months later, she left to start what she referred to as her, quote, dream job, cutting up offal at the local abattoir, from where she was quickly promoted to boning and given her own set of brand new, shiny butcher's knives. At home, she hung those knives over her bed so that they would, quote, always be handy if I needed them. A habit she continued until her incarceration. Everywhere she lived, she would hang up her knives. Katherine Knight's first real adult relationship would be with David Stanford Kellett. Katherine first met hard-drinking co-worker David Stanford Kellett in 1973 and completely dominated him in every way. If Kellett got into a fight at the hotel, Knight would step in, back him up without fail. Basically, she loved a good fistfight. Katherine Knight married David Kellett in 1974 at her request, with the couple arriving at the service on her motorcycle, with a very intoxicated Kellett on the pillion, basically riding behind her shotgun style. As soon as they arrived, Knight's mother Barbara gave Kellett some advice. Quote, "The old girl said to me, watch out. You better watch out. This one, she'll fucking kill you. Stir her up the wrong way, or do the wrong thing, and you're fucked, mate. Don't ever think of playing up on her, she'll fucking kill you." And that was her mother talking. She told him she's got something loose. She's got a screw loose somewhere. On their wedding night, Kellett would get his first glimpse of the true madness of Katherine Knight. She tried to strangle him. Knight explained it was because he fell asleep after only having intercourse 3 times. In May 1976, shortly after the birth of their first child, Melissa Ann, Kellett left Katherine Knight for another woman and moved to Queensland, apparently unable to cope with Knight's possessive, violent behaviour. The next day, Knight was seen pushing her new baby in a pram down the main street, violently throwing the pram from side to side. Knight was admitted to St Elmo's Hospital in Tamworth, where she was diagnosed with postnatal depression and spent several weeks recovering. After being released, Knight placed 2-month-old Melissa on a railway line shortly before the train was due. She then stole an axe, went into town and threatened to kill several people. A man known in the district as Old Ted was foraging near the railway line, found and rescued the baby Melissa in her pram, by all accounts only minutes before the train passed. Knight was arrested and again taken to St Elmo's Hospital, but apparently recovered and signed herself out the following day. A few days later, Knight slashed the face of a woman with one of her knives and demanded she drive her to Queensland to find Kellett. The woman whose face Knight had slashed escaped after they stopped at a service station, but by the time the police arrived, Knight had taken a little boy hostage and was threatening him with the knife. She was disarmed when police attacked her with brooms, and she was admitted to the Morisset Psychiatric Hospital. Once Knight had been admitted to the hospital, she told the nurses she had intended to kill the mechanic at the service station because he had repaired Kellett's car, which had allowed him to leave, and then kill both her husband and his mother when she finally did get to Queensland. In 1984, Knight decided to leave her husband Kellett and moved in, first with her parents in Aberdeen, then to a rented house in nearby Muswell Brook. Although she returned to work at the abattoir, she injured her back the following year and went on a disability pension. No longer needing to rent accommodation close to her work, the government gave her a housing commission house in Aberdeen. In 1986, Knight met with 38-year-old miner David Saunders, who would soon be her next failed relationship. A few months later, David Saunders moved in with her and her 2 daughters, although he kept his old apartment in Scone. Knight soon became jealous regarding what David did when he was not around and would often throw him out. He would move back to his apartment in Scone, and then she would invariably follow and beg him to return. In May 1987, she did another unthinkable act, and as an animal lover, this shit is just insane. Katherine Knight cut the throat of his 2-month-old dingo pup in front of David, for no more reason than as an example of what would happen if he ever had an affair. She then proceeded to knock him unconscious with a frying pan. He would receive severe skull fractures and still maintain the relationship. In June 1988, she gave birth to her 3rd daughter, Sarah, and at this stage, I don't know if you're thinking it, but I'm thinking, just stop procreating, you fucking psychopath. Later the same year, after the birth of her daughter Sarah, Katherine and David Saunders got into an argument, during which she hit Saunders in the face with an iron before stabbing him in the stomach with a pair of scissors. He very wisely decided to move back to Scone, but when he later returned home, he found she had cut up all of his clothes. Saunders took long service leave and went basically into hiding. Knight tried to find him, but no one admitted to knowing where he was. Several months later, he returned to see his daughter and found that Knight had gone to the police and told them that she was afraid of him. They issued her with an apprehended violence order, or an AVO, against Saunders. So he gets smashed in the head, beaten with a frying pan, which results in skull fractures, and then stabbed in the stomach with scissors, but he's a threat to her safety. Right. Around 2 years later, in 1990, Knight became pregnant by a 43-year-old former abattoir co-worker, John Chillingworth, and gave birth the following year to a boy they named Eric. That's right, another child. Their relationship lasted 3 years before she left him for a man that she had been having an affair with for some time. The man who would, unfortunately, become the reason for Katherine Knight's infamous name and horrifying story. The man was John Price. John Price, or Pricey as his mates knew him, was the father of 3 children when Knight had an affair with him. Reputedly a, quote, terrific bloke, liked by everyone who knew him, his own marriage had ended in 1988. While his 2-year-old daughter had remained with his former wife, the 2 older children lived with him. Price was well aware of Knight's violent reputation, and she moved into his house in 1995. His children liked her. He was making a lot of money working in the local mines, and apart from violent arguments, at first life was a bunch of roses. In 1988, they had a fight over Price's refusal to marry her, and in retaliation, Knight videotaped items he had stolen from work and sent the tape to his boss. Such a dick move. Although the items were out-of-date medical kits that he had scavenged from the company rubbish tip, so they were being thrown out essentially, Price was fired from the job he had held for 17 years. That same day, he kicked Knight out. She returned to her home, whilst news of what she had done spread throughout the town. A few months later though, Price restarted the relationship, although he now refused to allow her to move in with him. The fighting became even more frequent, and most of his friends would no longer have anything to do with him, at least while they remained together. His mates knew there was something not quite right about Katherine Knight. In February 2000, a series of assaults on Price culminated with Knight stabbing Price in the chest. Injured, but thankfully not dead, Price was finally fed up. He kicked her out of the house, again. On Tuesday, February 29th, the year 2000, he stopped at the Scones Magistrates Court on his way to work and took out a restraining order to keep her away from both him and his children. That afternoon, Price told his co-workers that if he did not come to work the next day, it would be because Knight had killed him. He said, "I think she's going to do me in." They pleaded with him not to go home, and he told them that he believed she would kill his children if he did not. Price arrived home to find that Knight, although not there herself, had sent the children away for a sleepover at a friend's house. He then spent the evening with his neighbours before returning home to go to bed at about 11 p.m. Earlier that day, Knight had brought new black lingerie and had videotaped all her children while making comments which have since been interpreted as a crude will. Knight later arrived at Price's house while he was sleeping and sat watching TV for a few minutes. She then decided to take a quick shower, after which she woke up John Price and they had sex, after which he fell asleep. Fair warning, this is where shit's about to get real heavy. At 6 a.m. the following morning, the neighbours became concerned that Price's car was still in the driveway, and when Price did not arrive at work, his employer sent a worker to see what was wrong. Both the neighbour and the worker tried knocking on Price's bedroom window to wake him, but after noticing blood on the front door, they alerted the police. The police arrived at 8 a.m. Breaking down the back door, police found John Price's body. Well, they found some of it at least. They found Katherine Knight comatose, laying in the master bed from taking a large number of pills. She tried to kill herself. It seemed that Katherine Knight had stabbed John Price with her butcher's knife while he was asleep. According to the blood evidence, he awoke and tried to turn the light on before attempting to escape whilst Knight chased him through the house. He managed to open the front door and get outside, but either stumbled back inside or was dragged back into the hallway, where he finally died after bleeding out. We would learn later that Knight then went into Aberdeen and withdrew $1,000 from Price's ATM account. Price's autopsy revealed that he had been stabbed at least 37 times, in both the front and back of his body, with many of the wounds extending into vital organs. Several hours after Price had died, however, things turned even darker. It appeared that Katherine Knight had skinned John Price's body and hung the skin from a meat hook on the architrave of a door to the lounge room. She then proceeded to decapitate him and cooked parts of his body, serving up the meat with baked potato, pumpkin, zucchini, cabbage, some yellow squash and gravy in 2 settings at the dinner table. Alongside each dinner plate was a note, each note bearing the name of one of Price's children on it. She was preparing to serve his body parts to his children. A third meal was thrown out onto the back lawn for unknown reasons, and it is speculated Knight had attempted to eat it, but could not follow through. John Price's head was found in a pot with vegetables. The pot was still warm, estimated to be at between 40 and 50 degrees Celsius, or 104 to 122 degrees Fahrenheit, indicating that the cooking had taken place in the early morning hours. Sometime later, Knight had arranged the body with the left arm draped over an empty 1.25 litre soft drink bottle with the legs crossed. This was claimed in court to be an act of defilement, demonstrating Knight's contempt for John Price. Knight had left a handwritten note on top of a photograph of Price, blood-stained and covered with small pieces of flesh. The note read, "Time got you back, Jonathan, for raping my daughter. You too, Beck, for Ross, for little John. Now play with little John's dick, Price." The accusations in the note were found to be completely false. Not to mention, she had the spelling and grammatical skills of a 3-year-old. So, just in case that didn't quite sink in, she murdered her partner John Price, skinned his body, hung the skin from the door frame, decapitated him, and then cooked up his head and parts of his buttocks to serve to his children. You sick, twisted fuck. It would appear that Knight had removed Price's head and skin using the same knives she'd used to decapitate pigs at the abattoir. In fact, Knight had skinned her partner's corpse with such expertise and precision, she was able to leave the entire hide intact. And you don't really want to refer to it as a hide, but what are you going to do? It was so intact it included Price's nose, ears, genitals, mouth, and even his hair. Investigators discovered Price's pelt hanging from the butcher's hook in the doorway. And because Knight had removed Price's skin so cleanly, medical officials were later able to sew it back onto his body. As the judge, Justice O'Keefe, presiding over the trial, claimed, quote, "The last minutes of John Price's life must have been a time of abject terror for him, as they were a time of utter enjoyment for her. She has not expressed any contrition or remorse, and if released, she poses a serious threat to the security of society." During the trial, one of Australia's foremost criminal psychologists, Dr. Milton, was asked to discuss his findings after interviewing Knight. Dr. Milton said that Knight suffered from borderline personality disorder, but still knew exactly what she was doing on the evening of February 2000. Concluding the Newcastle Supreme Court trial, Justice O'Keefe stated, quote, "Katherine Mary Knight, you have pleaded guilty and been convicted of the murder of John Charles Price at Aberdeen on or about February 29, 2000. In respect of your crime, I sentence you to imprisonment for life." In June 2006, Knight appealed the life sentence, claiming that a penalty of life in jail without the possibility of parole was too severe for the killing. Justices Peter McLennan, Michael Adams and Megan Latham dismissed the appeal in the New South Wales Court of Criminal Appeal in September, with Justice McLennan writing in his judgment, quote, "This was an appalling crime, almost beyond contemplation in a civilised society." Katherine Mary Knight is currently imprisoned at the Silverwater Women's Correctional Centre in New South Wales. She now works as a cleaner in the Governor's office, and although she is claimed to be a good cook, it's highly unlikely she'll ever get a job in the prison kitchen.
It really calls for an exercising of the mind, the heart, and the soul in the unison of biases that gives rise to actual individuals.
You want a bit of limelight, chasing all the comets. You're just another lost post wasting in the comments. Adrenaline that you're tasting in your vomit. You say you're on your grind, but you're skating with the grommets. Shooting for your goals, then you leave them to the keeper. Put them all in hold or pack them deep into the freezer. Everybody's scared to take a leap into the ether, but no one is prepared to wake from sleep when they're a dreamer. Switch up the speed, too fast to detect. Stick with the team, be the last to defect. Join up the dots, start to connect. It doesn't mean mistakes are hard to correct. This existence is brutal. I think persistence is crucial. You're far from the finish line, distance is mutual. We're all lost in space, though resistance is futile. I feel like I'm in purgatory. I booked a ticket when I heard the calling. My head is spinning while the earth is stalling, and now I'm feeling like it's working for me. I feel like I'm in purgatory. I booked a ticket when I heard the calling. My head is spinning while the earth is stalling, and now I'm feeling like it's working for me. Don't read the article. Me, myself, and I is a cult with 3 cardinals. Change in the air. Don't breathe the particles. I'm tired of treading water. Scrape these sea barnacles. I took a wild guess. I sunk the battleship. Hop in the lifeboat. You better paddle quick. I'm on my high horse. I lost the saddle clips. In a cataclysm, looking for the catalyst. I'm addicted. I'm hating these remissions. I wanna be the general. I'm breaking these divisions. Time to call the shots. I'm making these decisions. You can have a rest and I won't take an intermission. So I guess you wonder what I'm hoping for. I will keep on rapping till I'm talking with a broken jaw. It's my final play, level up the closing score. In a purgatory hallway trying to find an open door. I feel like I'm in purgatory. I booked a ticket when I heard the calling. My head is spinning while the earth is stalling, and now I'm feeling like it's working for me. I feel like I'm in purgatory. I booked a ticket when I heard the calling. My head is spinning while the earth is stalling, and now I'm feeling like it's working for me.